The Institute for Theological Partnerships, of which I'm very privileged to be director, was set up in 2009 by the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Joy Carter, to be the outward-facing aspect of theology at the university here. It's underpinned, because I'm the director, by liberation and feminist theologies. So all the projects that we do have that underpinning, have that ideology behind them. We have a number of partnerships around the world, and I think we're very, very lucky, actually, at this university to have such an institute. This year, we have tackled a very difficult image of Mary, and it is an image that's been so oppressive over the years for women, but the artists this year have taken it apart, deconstructed and reconstructed, which is the important thing. It's so often the case that in feminist theology, deconstruction happens, but reconstruction doesn't. So I'm delighted that this exhibition does both of those things. I think there's going to be really good feedback. And this is good, because this starts a conversation. And I look forward to carrying that conversation on into the future in many, many more exhibitions that deal with, tackle, deconstruct, reconstruct some of the harder and most difficult images in theology.
My name is Dr. Megan Clay. I'm an Early Careers Research Fellow here at Winchester. The importance of this exhibition is to look at what Mary stands for women theologically, and how she has been a model for women within the Catholic tradition as the doorway to God, and she is an important figure to many women within the church, within the Orthodox tradition and within the Catholic tradition. But for the Protestant church, she has been dismissed. So here we're looking for another way of seeing Mary.
I'm Jess Wood, and I work in a traditional way in the paintings. They're, on the one hand, based on the Christian iconic tradition. Also, it's a Christian, but basically a narrative tradition, which is to say the paintings tell a story. But some of the paintings also are intended to be more like an encounter between the viewer and the painting. I paint in a figurative style because a lot of my thinking and all of our thinking in this feminist group of artists is that ideas are embodied, and a figurative style is a very straightforward way of enabling an idea to articulate itself through something in the world, and that something in the world is often the human figure, but most especially the human face. And icon painting in particular often focuses on the human face. And if we think of Genesis, where the human is made in the image of God, where that is most apparent is in the eyes and in the gaze of the eyes. So that when you look at an icon, or you look at an iconic painting, you are encountering the presence, as it were, of another human, and often within the icon tradition, a sanctified human. But because I'm Jewish, ideas like the sanctification of a human are quite controversial. I painted Mary, who is sanctified, but I've also painted Miriam, who is a prophet. And a prophet is not a saint. That is a completely different role. A prophet is the voice of God, not the vision of God. So, in my Miriam paintings, I've tried to convey human aspiration as opposed to divinization. But when it comes to Mary, this is made more complicated because Mary's Hebrew name is Miriam, and Mary is called Mary. That's very English, the word Mary, but actually the real Mary was Jewish, obviously, as Jesus was Jewish. And so there's a lot of rooting and lineage in the images of Mary as a Jew. And in my Winchester painting, I've called it Mary the Jew, and I've given it the date in Winchester when Jews were expelled from Winchester, because I'm partly trying to say, here is your Mary, who you love and you're devoted to, but if Mary had been born in Winchester in the medieval period, you would have expelled her from your city. And she wears, in the picture, she wears, Winchester Christians didn't make Jews wear the Star of David as the Nazis did. They made them wear the 2 tablets of Moses. And I measured them exactly as 6 inches by 3 inches, which is the piece of felt that Jews had to wear. So I've measured that in the painting exactly at that size. I'm trying to make what is natural, nature, reveal something that is spiritual, the transcendent. And so I see my journey as very much, I'm an artist, but I'm also a religious artist, and I am making sacred art.
I think that being a feminist theologian is fluid.
Yeah.
There's a fluidity in that. Yeah. It's not a fixed absolute, it's not a fixed ideology, because it's forever evolving, because people's experiences are forever evolving, and they are diverse.
Yes.
And they are women, they are men, they are children.
Actually give voice to those who don't have the academic background but who still have an important experience.
A way of looking forward, whether we call it feminism, whether we call it whatever, but a way forward for women out of another tradition.
I'm Christine Kinsey. I'm an artist, a painter, but I've also been involved in developing arts within the community. I was co-founder of an art centre in Cardiff called Chapter, which was a centre that was concerned with being embedded in the community, but also bringing in developing and performance, and also breaking down boundaries between disciplines. That development has influenced the way in which I perceive the visual arts. As part of my work, teaching has also been an essential, has taken an essential role, and the idea that we're communicating ideas through visual language has been extremely relevant to the way I've produced the work for this exhibition. I initiated and developed and taught on a course, a creative development course, just north of Siena, and was working on the course for 8 years. Each year I would go down into Siena to go to the Pinateca, and I became fascinated by the composition and the characters that were featured in paintings of the Annunciation. There were 2 aspects of paintings of the Annunciation that I became very interested in. And the one was the way in which painters from the early Italian Sienese school of painting, right the way through the Renaissance, the way in which they portrayed Mary as she heard the news that she was going to be impregnated by God. The compositions were often were similar, the angel on the left and Mary on the right. There were very, very few paintings, it seemed to me, where Mary was actually protesting against this violation, as I see it, of her person. There was sometimes a picture of God as a man with a long white beard floating above her on a cloud, pointing down towards her, and she seemed to be submissive and accept that news without a kind of response. So I began to look for paintings by artists who'd seen that in a different way and who were actually painting her rejecting the idea. And one of the strongest images was by an artist called Lorenzo Lotto, where Mary is crouching and running across the room away from the news, and he paints a cat in the background with an arched tail racing after her. Another painting that shows her rejecting the idea of being impregnated by this person is a painting by Botticelli, where Mary is pushing away the news in a very dramatic way. But as far as I can see, there are very few paintings where she's actually responding in this way. Most of the paintings are about her accepting. The other aspect of paintings of the Annunciation is actually the way in which the artist composes the painting, angel on the left, Mary on the right, and the gap between. So the gap between the angel and Mary has been an important symbol in my work. What I've been trying to do is to make sure that in my paintings the woman is the subject and not the object of the painting. And so the gap is where the female characters that I've been developing, one, for example, is Llateus in Welsh, which is a female love messenger. And in the recent paintings I've been making, there are three other characters. There's the seated character, the walking character, and the standing character. And these characters move between the worlds that I create within my within the pictorial space.
I'm RKP, I'm a genderqueer artist. I currently live in Winchester, but I'm from Cambridge. I did my first year at Cambridge School of Art, but did my second and third year at Somerset College of Arts and Technology. I'm obsessed with colour and texture, and I sort of dedicated myself to understand paint and like the natural chemistry of it and how you can manipulate it. At university I never got into painting, made very sculptural work, very conceptual work in my last year. So in my painting now I don't really take on a very traditional approach. I don't use palette knives or paintbrushes opposed to traditional painters. And so I wanted to understand the medium more than its application, so that's why I drip it down the canvas. I let it be itself, and to create its own natural form I have a habit of mixing chemicals in with my special paint blends, which are non-traditional paint blends. I use acrylics and oils, but I mix them with emulsions and high pigments, and I use heat guns to manipulate the paint. Heat does things, especially when there's bleach involved, makes colours brighter or dull them down, and it will cook them on the canvas and create a different texture. Using this sort of alchemy kind of approach, I aim to sort of question the traditions of painting, and by process I sort of challenge what it means to paint in the abstract form. In this exhibition I have produced 2 pieces. I've also collaborated with another artist, Jana Yakimet. My paintings in general, I've broken down Mary. I've simply looked at her colours. In Mother of Broken Bread, I looked at her traditional colours, which are usually blues, greens. Mary, traditionally, for me personally, whenever I think of her, I go back to the nativity plays, and Mary was always dressed in blue. The process of the first painting inspired this second painting. Mary is represented as the circle, which is the number 0, the eternity of creation. The painting portrays a more modern feminist view of Mary, represented in sort of her colours, which are white and red, representing her purity, and red as a symbol of power. In these 2 paintings, I've tried to bring about a new way of seeing Mary in a more abstract, simplified, less religious, more approachable way.
Well, my name is Annette Esser. I was born in Cologne in Germany. I'm coming from a Catholic family, and I would better say a Catholic artist family. I studied art and I studied Catholic and Protestant religion in Germany and also in America. And I've done a doctorate on feminist spirituality. And from that derives also my kind of critical view on religion, on religious tradition, but also some new insights. And somehow I've come back much more to the arts recently, because I don't only want to be critical, but I also would like to be involved in reconstructing and in finding new images of what we really want and what is important in our spirituality as women today. So this exhibition is about Mary, and I was thinking about Mary in terms of that my mother wanted me to pray to Mary, pray the rosary. I had a real problem with that, Mary being the Virgin Mother of Jesus and somehow very far away. And through my biblical studies I found that Mary indeed was a young woman, maybe like 13, 14, 15, when she got pregnant with Jesus. And so I wanted to paint this young woman instead of an older mother figure. And what was then important to me was this kind of biblical story of Annunciation, which kind of fascinated me. Years ago I saw an image of Fra Angelico, where the angel is coming to this room where Mary is sitting, and somehow Mary is a very humble girl, very touched by this, but I thought the angel is so far away. So the idea about in my painting was to paint Mary and the angel closer together. And my art was inspired by my own experience and feminist theologies that I had read.
My first painting, In the Depths of the Divine, comes from meeting Mary in the Catholic Church and the doctrine of Mary. It really did affect me because I related to it as a single parent. Although it was very alien, I felt an affinity with Mary as a mother, and at last found value in my own motherhood. My second painting, I revisited In the Depths of the Divine, but in this painting I realised that this was my incarnation, so I have a flame under her skirt. First I looked at the pregnancy of Mary as a young woman, and then she's pregnant. Did she ask to be pregnant? Was that her choice? So this is the narrative of Mary. And then I have the older Mary, the Crone. But the painting is about me waiting for God, but actually realising that this was my incarnation of the divine. This was God in me. This is where I found God in me.
You know, the angel is probably more representative of God, but I think ultimately there's also a trust in oneself to be, to be capable of dealing with this and to be capable of doing certain things.
Is the Annunciation story the Gospels have been backed some metaphor or what?
No, I think there's very little value in the literal reading of any scripture. I think that's where where religion becomes a very dangerous tool that ends in violence, because my literal reading then becomes the only truth. And I don't think that's very resourceful. What you do in theology most of the time is actually finding the different truths and appreciating that there's a multitude of opportunity to interpret things, and that there is not one truth really.
What's the central message of the Annunciation story for you?
I would say that it's there is a strength in what we seem to see as a weakness. We see someone who is completely devoted, someone who has no other chance than doing what they're being asked to do because they're tied, or someone who willingly surrenders into disempowerment. Just anyone who's disempowered, I think we're failing to see that in disempowerment people find power and strength.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Vice-Chancellor and indeed the whole university, welcome to the feminist images of Mary and Miriam. It's the brainchild of the Feminist Theology and Art Forum of the Institute for Theological Partnerships. That forum was set up last year and launched with the Female Images of Christ Christa exhibition, which many of you will have been at, which was absolutely fantastic and which attracted considerable international interest. It's already travelled to the Netherlands and there are plans afoot to exhibit it in the USA and Austria. And now we have this wonderful exhibition. Of course, there has been feminist art for many years, but this is the first time that feminist theologians have produced feminist art. The artists in this exhibition began their journey here by reading feminist work, reflecting on the role of Mary, Miriam, in the lives of women, and producing their art from that standpoint. This is unusual, as even as those attempting to create something new usually start with the tradition and the literature of the tradition and work their way through it. These artists start somewhere else. They understand their remit as producing visual expressions of new ways of being and new ways of knowing. And I was reflecting as I drove here this evening how sometimes words just fail you and only art can speak. I felt as I walked around this exhibition that many of these images speak and offer reflection on violence, on oppression, on silence, on death, and on hope and defiance. The artists exhibiting this year in this exhibition are from various parts of the world, from Germany, from Spain, Finland, England, and they come from all kinds of different traditions, from Judaism, from Christianity, all different types of Christianity. Some are influenced by Gnosticism, and others just simply curious about how religious belief and theology develops. So thanks to the wonderful Professor Lisa Isherwood for being the brainchild behind all this, to Megan Clay for doing all the organising and some of the painting, absolutely wonderful, to all the artists. The University of Winchester is immensely proud to host this exhibition of talented artists and just stunning theologians. Welcome.